we are going to segue now into our presumed Razzie movie. Again, this is not our distinction.
It certainly did get a lot of nominations online, though.
Yeah, the bettors are betting on Dolittle. All right, so Dolittle, this is Robert Downey Jr. This came out in January. It was supposed to come out in 2019, and then it was dumped to January of 2020, which I said earlier in the episode definitely raised a lot of eyebrows of insiders who know that big movies that come out in January usually means no awards buzz, usually means that dead zone after the year ends. And it might mean the movie could be bad. Now, it's not exactly true, but Metacritic has a 26 out of 100 for this movie. And IMDb has a 5.6, and Rotten Tomatoes has 13%.
Ooh.
13%, all right?
When did this come out?
Back to the 2029. This came out January 13th?
Very beginning
January
of
17th?
2020.
January 17th, yeah. Well, and also it was supposed to come out in 2019, and apparently it did so poorly with test audiences that they did 21 days of reshoots. Now, what's funny about this is, so Robert Downey Jr. had not made a non-Marvel movie since 2014 when he did The Judge, and he had a cameo in Chef. So we're now waiting, if you say 2019 was when it was supposed to come out, 5 years of only playing Iron Man. And then the first movie he does after all of that is Dolittle, which ultimately, you know, it's fine. I loved the Eddie Murphy one when I was younger. And this was going to be very live action. The animals were going to look fucking real. And it's a kid's movie.
It's a kid's movie.
This is a kid's movie.
Although he did, by his own admission, describe the accent he uses for this character as passable Welsh.
Nice. Yeah, that's funny. But again, kids movie, who the fuck cares if you're a kid? So the description about this particular one is, I'm actually going to read the longer one. So on IMDb, this is the longer one. This actually doesn't happen in the movie necessarily, but it's sort of talked about. After his wife's death, Dr. John Dolittle, Robert Downey Jr., decided to hide from the world with his beloved animals, who he can talk to. But he has to take a journey to a mysterious island to find a healing tree, which is the only medicine that can help the dying Queen Victoria, ever heard of her, in Buckingham Palace. All right. So this is rated PG for some action, rude humor, and it says brief language, but there's no language. All right. Yeah. Now, the supporting cast who voices all of the animals.
There are like 5 Oscar winners in there.
5, is that right? Yeah. Emma Thompson, Oscar winner. Rami Malek, Oscar winner. John Cena, awesome guy. Kumail Nanjiani, Oscar nominee. Octavia Spencer, Oscar winner. Tom Holland, a.k.a. Spider-Man, way too young to have an Oscar. Craig Robinson. Ray Fiennes, Oscar nominee. Selena Gomez. So you're talking about a really cool cast. And then, of course, how could I forget Antonio Banderas? And in real life, you actually see Michael Sheen and Jim Broadbent, Oscar winner. So awesome cast. It's Dr. Dolittle. Yeah, the story is he's a recluse out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. And then a girl who is she? She's related to Queen Victoria somehow. Gets him to go to, he has to go
Lady
to
Rose
find a mysterious
They
tree.
don't really fill
he
that
goes on
out.
this little journey. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's him talking to animals, and he has to save Queen Victoria from dying. Yada 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 yada. And Michael Sheen, who's awesome, is the villain of the movie. Which is
okay.
cool.
So just bear with me on this. It's a kids movie, and in the first first 5 minutes, they kill his wife and shoot a squirrel.
Yeah.
Some of those kids' movies are dark at the beginning, man. Some of
Fairy tales, yeah. Shit has
that's
to happen.
poor squirrel. That kid
right?
just fucking shot that squirrel.
Yeah. It's like
that is
but
what
also
that was,
like I must say that inciting incident led to my favorite fucking character in the film. That squirrel is hilarious.
Squirrel's awesome.
Yeah.
The squirrel is
Kevin.
He's the only one that has some like
I can't even think
layers.
about it. I can't even think about it with him saying, "Oh, he might be a little twitchy," and then they just see the like Apocalypse Now flashback that the squirrel's having. He sits up and he's like, "Revenge!" And I pissed myself laughing.
The cannon, the cannon
like,
fire.
The cannon isn't even there.
And he's got as Star Trek fans, he's got the captain's log going throughout. It's
yes, yeah, my favorite character.
I did want to kick it off by saying my overall impression of this movie, because we're probably going to be very critical of this, but my overall impression when it finished was, if I was a kid, I think I would have loved this movie. Same. I think if I would have been introduced to this as a child, I would have rewatched this a lot. There's a good sense of adventure. The characters are fun. the CGI is good enough for you to have a really good time with it. You're not going to be thinking about some of the stuff that as adults we might critique in a little bit. So if you just want the adventure, you want them to get on that fucking boat with animals and go find the healing tree or whatever, like you're going to have a good time. It's an hour and a half. It's tight. It's a good kids movie. I think part of the problem was that it came out in January, and I don't know if they pitched it as a children's only movie. I think it was pitched as like family friendly, and RDJ is in this, so adults can see it too. And I think if you went into it with that, you might be a little disappointed because there's some issues with it for sure. But if you allow yourself to just think, I have children, or if I did have children, what would they think watching this? I think you're going to smile a lot while you're watching this movie.
I must admit, there was a lot of conversation happened in our house. Again, conversations about these movies happen because, like, Therese watches them with me half the time. But It was, I was like, why were people so hard on this? And she said her answer was Pixar, because now people demand adult jokes in the kids' film and this Oscar-winning level in your kids' film. And if it's not that, and everybody went in expecting, it's Robert Downey Jr., he's Iron Man, and you didn't give him Iron Man, and they wanted more Iron Man. And I just think everybody went in with the wrong frame of mind, and this got way more flack than it should have.
Definitely wrong frame of mind. To her point, maybe in a critical way, because I agree with her. I think if Pixar had written this movie, it would have been better. I think there's better storytellers. I feel like there were some. I just want to point this out because I just thought it was so strange.
The writer-director has an Oscar too, by the way, for Traffic.
He has it for. So I was just about to say, this man, his name, if anybody is curious, this was directed by Stephen Gaghan. He is the Oscar award-winning writer for Traffic and Syriana.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has written heavy stuff, and then he wrote and directed this movie. So part of me was kind of thinking, like, of course, I'm so happy for him. I'm glad he got an opportunity to direct. But part of me was thinking, like,
I'm wondering, did he write the first?
A victim?
He wrote the first 5 minutes, and they were like, they got rolled up the newspaper and went, no, more kid stuff, more kid stuff.
Stop killing
I'm
curious if
squirrels.
why he wrote this and how it came into him getting a chance to direct it, because clearly he comes from like a heavy dramatic political commentary, socio commentary, and then he wrote and directed Dolittle. So I thought that was a little strange. But again, throwing that out the window, I thought if you had the kid thing, it was fun. In terms of the actual filmmaking and story, if we were just storyboarding this and we're in our room and we're looking at the whiteboard, the giant whiteboard of how we're going to tell our story, I do think there are some moments that I'm curious if they shot and cut some transitional things that didn't seem to kind of work for me. It felt really jumpy the way.
Oh yeah, they when they test screened this, they test screened this and then brought in like Seth Rogen and 3 other people to do rewrites.
Really?
They brought in Seth Rogen to do rewrites for this writer, but what an interesting ask. Like they were clearly looking for. They're probably looking for.
I mean,
funny
that's
too.
pretty much where the
Yeah.
fart gags and the dragon anima came from. I'm pretty sure.
That was a pretty weird moment.
So it's funny. So speaking of Seth Rogen, and back to maybe like what happened with the way they rolled this out. Some of you back like listening to this podcast might not even realize that this movie ever happens. I mean, a lot happened in 2020, so it's easy to forget something that came out in January. I saw with Chloe The Lion King in theaters in like August or September of 2019, and that's when I first saw the trailer for this. And I remember the trailer. Robert Downey Jr. barely spoke, which after hearing his accent, which is fine, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised now. But
No, it's not.
they listed it as, or they listed it. The trailer was very much an adventure movie, almost along the lines of the Jumanji remakes. So it was really like a little intense. So whereas the Eddie Murphy one is just so family friendly with that, like right off the bat, and like all of the. You know what? I didn't expect to compare it to the Eddie one, but here's what I'll say too about this that I think I understand people, because we all like this movie way more than the Razzies are going to. So I'll just say just to bite back a little bit. Robert Downey Jr.'s voice, forgetting the accent, was very stiff. And Robert Downey Jr. we know to be one of the more animated performers of our time, right? His big breakout, apart from being a child star and well, like a young adult star and being on Saturday Night Live in the 80s, was Chaplin in 1992. Like this guy fucking played Chaplin. And he, obviously Iron Man and all of his other animated performances.
Did he say
his
much in
voice
Chaplin?
trapped him. Like he What?
Did he say much in Chaplin?
So his voice, his voice trapped him because his voice, I can't do a Welsh accent, but it was always the same decibel volume. It was always,
it's okay, neither can he.
So anyway, when you go to Eddie, when Eddie's reacting to being able to talk to these animals, and he's like freaking out about being able to talk to these animals, like as the audience, you're with him because I'd be freaking out if I started talking to a tiger too. With this, he's already 20 years past that point, and so it goes right into the plot. And so, you lose a little bit of the fun that you could have had. Again, I'm not trying to give them notes, but I understand the critics being a kind of down on this movie, especially giving it a lot to Robert Downey Jr., but I still think it's worth watching. I still think there's a lot of fun to be had in there. Like but you can definitely see the opportunity for more.
And you can see where there was a little bit of collaboration between the directors and the CG artists in what they could get these animals to do. Because there's some great gags with the ostrich. There's some great gags with the monkeys where they're just sitting there sloping coconuts in the background of a scene.
Yeah.
The fucking dog guard duty scene. It's like engage guard duty mode, and then just starts dragging his ass across the carpet. It's like there's so many fun gags with the animals, and they I feel like sometimes most times it really paid off. It was great. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
Because the animals independently, yeah, I thought that worked. Jeff, to your point, I think what I was hoping for, I was like, okay, so Dolittle is well into this. So what does that mean? And they tried to give it to us, but I wanted the kids, the young man and the young woman, to be my surrogate. And they didn't freak out. They didn't have as much of what you're talking about as I needed to justify what the fuck I was watching. Whether it's a kid's movie or not, you still need characters to go on that journey of how is this happening? So here's a good example. At the very beginning of this, maybe 20 minutes into this movie, your exposition is already happened. The young boy and the young girl find themselves at the door to Dolittle Manor, and they open the door, or they knock, and a gorilla opens the door. And even though we're in on the joke that this gorilla is kind of a scaredy cat, or we're learning that in this process, the children did not react accordingly. Even if you have heard about, oh yeah, grandmother or Aunt Victoria, Queen Victoria told me a gorilla would answer the door. Come on, give me a little bit of what is happening so that we can justify the absurdity of the fact that this guy talks to animals.
He puts his head in a fish tank to talk to an octopus, and nobody in the room. Now I know it's stuffy, and I know it's in Queen Victoria's house, but yeah, I need it. Again, back to the Eddie one, which I again didn't mean to talk about too much. The best part about the tiger, which is sort of the dangerous animal in the Eddie Murphy one, is Eddie reacting to the tiger. That makes the tiger so much better. So my favorite animal in this, but let's do this. So what is your favorite animal? Obviously the squirrel is going to be up there, but I loved the ostrich, to your point before, but it was for the snarky humor, because the ostrich was the one that was basically this sucks. Before
you answer that, Chris, I don't know whether you got the chat up, but Chris just popped out and said hi. He's just found us. We're talking about Dolittle. Anyone in the chat? We're talking about Dolittle. Feel free to share your opinions.
Hazard, so good. We talked about you with Grease too a little bit last time we saw you, Chris. Thanks so much for coming back. Oh my God.
Chris.
So anyway, I love the ostrich. He had one of my favorite lines because he's a big animal. So one of the kids rides or maybe it's actually Downey rides the ostrich, who's voiced by Kumail. And somebody says something like, have a nice ride. And the ostrich is like, I am the ride.
Yeah, the horse is
stupid childish humor, which is fun. But it did have a little bit of the effect of the live Lion King, where with the animals talking, and it was just their animals being snarky, which is fun. But the stakes are still what keeps an hour and a half movie going. And I can't
and how do you build stakes in a situation like this where your protagonist, the center of your story, is doing something that is completely normal to them? You have to make it completely abnormal to everyone else. So you're exactly right. The moments in Victoria's bedroom when she's sick and there's 20 people in there, I wanted everyone to be, even if he has a reputation and you've heard of it before and we're 20 years into Dolittle's story, it still has to be ridiculous and frustrating and crazy to everyone in the room. So Michael Sheen was my saving grace a little bit. He's wonderful in this. Part of me wanted him to be Dolittle,
because he was saying what you were thinking.
Put him as but I wanted Jim Broadbent, who is a genius, and I wanted everyone else in the room to be a little bit more like, what the fuck is going on? So that it wasn't gimmicky. It's not gimmicky if Dolittle is doing it in spite of the absurdity and in spite of everybody's reactions. It felt a little gimmicky when everyone is just like, this is how it is with Dolittle. I don't know. My favorite animal was Emma Thompson's Parrot.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
No, the squirrel was it for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of I'll tell you what though, like I just sat back and had fun with that. I didn't think too much about it because it's a kids movie, and but a lot of the scenes are there just for comedy's sake and have nothing whatsoever to do with the plot. So you get these little sketches occasionally where it's like this animal antic followed by this animal antic, and that's great for kids, but it just comes across as really disjointed for us old folk.
I think ultimately I agree with you, and I think the reason that this is just my personal diagnosis. I think the reason I kept feeling like that was happening is because, again, Academy Award-winning writer of Traffic in Sirianna. I'm not sure if he was quite positive whose point of view this movie was supposed to be told from, if it was the boys or if it was Dolittle's. And I kept wanting him to pick one because part of me felt like I'm not inside Dolittle's head enough to understand how we're getting from A to B to C to D for everything, emotionally and plot-wise. And I don't think I would have cared about that at all if the whole movie had been from the boys, but he kept kind of waffling. And I'm not going to even blame him entirely because that sounds to me like that's a studio saying, we got to fix this. Let's make it more funny. Let's call Seth Rogen. And then the editing got tweaked. They reshot a bunch of shit and the through line was blown to shit. And the point of view was perhaps blown to shit.
You're not wrong, but I still had to buzz you.
No, I don't know. So I'm not saying it was, but I wouldn't be surprised if that would happen. Do you guys agree with that? The point of view kind of maybe have been why some of these situations and the gagginess kind of kept coming up when it didn't need to come up. It felt forced sometimes.
Yeah,
I guess it's a good thought. Yeah,
I mean, it was definitely one where they panicked and went, "We need to fix this because people ticked the box and didn't like it." And I mean, sadly, that's happening more and more. And the results, in the case, and the movie I brought up for our New Year's show, New Mutants, which we're touching on later. As well, similar thing happened with that, and I won't say too much about it now, but they went full circle with that thing. Yeah,
for sure. I will say back to I keep doing the little nitpicky shit. At one point, because my mom knew I was taking notes, I watched this with my parents. My mom just goes, "You're laughing, Jeff," which I guess is her way of saying, "Don't you shit on this movie." You like this guy. You were laughing. Get the fuck out of here with your notes and your criticism. You liked it. I was like, all right. It's true. We laughed.
I just got to interrupt quickly because I'm pretty sure everyone can hear that. But someone is hammering the fuck out of the boiler in my boiler room at the moment. It's coming up through the pipes, which are right next to my computer.
I can't hear
it.
Nice.
I guess they're fixing it.
Yeah, that's how you fix it for sure.
Or they're killing somebody against the boiler. I don't know. It could be either.
I agree though, Jeff. I feel like I kept telling myself, even when there were this is the endearing nature of this movie, is that even when there were moments as an adult person who's into movies and was trying to think, maybe not too critically, but I can't help but think critically about it. Even when I noticed problems, and there are problems, I didn't care that much. The nature of this kind of story, the adventure, the production design is great. You feel like you're in that world. The Dolittle Manor, I want to go play there. As a kid, I wish I was invited to that place, and we get to go on a fucking, sea adventure on a ship. We get to go sail across the world. I don't know. I think it's still, if you allow yourself to just kind of go there, not be too judgmental, and to Teresa's point, not to hold it up to the genius of Pixar standards, then I think you're still going to have a good time. Like so many Razzie considerations in movies, this movie was not the worst movie you've ever seen. It's miles away from that. It's a decent movie.
I would not even put it in. I think a lot of people like to pile on once the negativity starts, and it's so easy on the internet because it's anonymous. But I'll stand up, everyone knowing who I am, and say, no, this probably doesn't deserve to be in the Razzie category. It's not the worst thing.
I agree.
It
now,
was
I
just
will announce
very,
this.
very misinterpreted.
There are 2 awards that this movie has already been nominated for or received. One is the People's Choice Awards, where, just to show what Jeff was saying earlier about how sometimes people, like Sandra Bullock, she won a Razzie and then she won a fucking Oscar. What's that about?
She didn't
the People's
deserve
Choice Awards, I don't think so. Yeah, of course I agree with that. The People's Choice Awards gave the favorite male movie star, nominating him for this performance as Dolittle. And then the other award they won is the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, the sequel or remake that should never have been remade.
Yeah, fine.
So it's kind of it's just show you you can't judge everything based on what you hear from one
No.
article. So if you had
I
only
just
seen
want
that
to point
first
out
one,
that those journalists probably encompass a lot of film critics who are really just trying to get your attention.
I think so
which is
too.
why Robert Downey Jr. nominating for him this shit is just he's an A-list star, and you're always rooting.
Yeah, I think we call that
in our darkest selves, we're rooting for an A-list star to give a shit.
We call that tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because other than his accent, which is weird, I'm not from that area of the world. I don't know what it's supposed to sound like, but it was strange. It's strange in Sherlock Holmes. Like I understand how it bothers a lot of people because he's so brilliant in other things. And Jeff and I have talked about this before on this pod for sure. Like sometimes you want your personality actors to remain personality. Not everyone's Joaquin Phoenix and Daniel Day-Lewis, and not everyone has that style. I want my RDJ to look and sound like RDJ. I think he's a fucking genius when he does that stuff, and he didn't need to go do this movie and try to do an accent to impress me. However, I was still able to kind of let it go. I didn't know what the fuck he was doing. I didn't know what accent that was, but it didn't really ruin the movie for me.
I think there were a couple of times where straight up I thought, okay, he's made a choice there that he probably should have been corrected on.
Yeah, where was his dialect coach?
Yeah.
Like, who let him do that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that's good for this. This is Disney Plus. No, it's not. It's on HBO Max.
It's on HBO Max.
This film is on HBO Max right now. Have some fun, especially if you have kids. Of course, if the kids in the movie were more fleshed out, the kids would probably like it even more. But watch it with your kids. Good family fun. So that's it.
You didn't get away with that.
Right at the bottom. Okay, friends. Well, this has been a really, really fun first episode in our It Was the Best of Film. It was
Season
the worst
2.
of film
We're off.
Segment. Oscar film, Razzie film.
Again,
the Five Bloods.
Check out the social media stuff. We're going to post our whole slate so that you can try to, because obviously everything we're talking about are new movies. So we want you to try to watch these with us so we don't have to worry too much about spoilers. We want to have full in-depth conversations. So check out the social media so you can make sure and see what we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. So you can catch up with us and watch it on the streaming service.